Okay, hello everybody. Thanks for joining today's event. I'm Jason Gumpert from msdynamicsworld.com, and I am really pleased to have with us today Jerry Weinstock of CRM Innovation. If you have been around the CRM community for a while, you may already know Jerry. He is a really active community member. He's a Microsoft MVP, and he regularly presents on different topics related to Microsoft technology and especially Dynamics CRM. He's also an active blogger and service provider for the Dynamics CRM community as well. So it's really great to have him today. We welcome your questions during today's event. I know Jerry will be leaving time at the end to answer those. You can use the Q&A block. You should see to the right of the main presentation window at any point as we go along through today's event. So without any further delay, please allow me to welcome Jerry Weinstock.
So thank you for the opportunity to make this presentation today. We're going to get ready to learn about Microsoft Flow, which was released to general availability on October 1st of last year, just a couple months ago. It's part of an exciting package of powerful tools that have been added to the Office 365 platform, in addition to all the standard things like mail and so forth. So we're going to take a look at it. These bullet points here are really a repeat of the session objectives from the, that you saw on the sign-up page, or you might have seen in any blog posting. And that's all well and good. I'm going to give you some insight into the who, what, where, when, and how part of Flow. And then we're going to go into 2 live demos of the product with a little bit of luck, quite frankly. But we'll see. Live demos are always interesting. But the real objective of this webinar is to get you jazzed up about Microsoft Flow. In my opinion, it's one of the most exciting additions to the Office 365 platform offering for common folk. So when I say common folk, well, what do I mean by that? Well, common folk are people like you and me that don't code all day, but would like to do really cool stuff that generally takes code to get it done. So we've got this product, Microsoft Flow, that's empowering power users and functional consultants. I'm presuming that there's a high number of power users and functional consultants on the call today to do stuff that really only the cool kids on the block seem to know how to do. That's like moving parts around on the chessboard by just writing a couple lines of code. So now we're going to get some of those capabilities also for everybody out there that's a non-coder. Okay, so what's important on this page? Well, first off is I had the good fortune to attend the CRM 1.2 launch in Kansas City back in 2003. And since then, all I've been doing every day is Microsoft CRM. Back in those days, it was really easy to know everything about the product and what it did and how to do it. But simply put, today, it's quite a challenge with the way the product has expanded to even keep up with just, the sales or marketing modules, not counting Flow and Microsoft Social Engagement and all the other features and functions. The other thing that's important about this slide is that it's only 10 weeks away from the start of water skiing season in Kansas. So if there aren't any Flow questions at the end of the webinar, I'd be glad to chat with anybody that wants to talk about water skiing or any other hobbies of interest. And lastly, on this screen, there's some ways to reach out and get in touch with me if you've got any questions or you need to correct something that I said on this presentation that was either incorrect or wasn't conveyed properly. So you find me on Twitter, on the blog, or by email. So before we get into the presentation, one of the things that we're going to do is with social media today. So if you're a Twitter enthusiast, what I'd like to ask you to do is do a tweet right now, maybe something about the presentation, and put in the hashtags for MS Dynamics World, Dynamics 365, and or MSDY and CRM. And if so, when you do that tweeting, maybe we'll see your name come up in lights later on in the presentation in about 20 minutes. Okay, so what is Flow? Let's break it down into components. One, it's a cloud-based service out there in the Office 365 platform. You can install it, flow to run on your Windows server inside your network, although there is a on-premise connection, which I'll cover in a moment. It makes it practical and simple for line of business users, like a lot of people on this call, functional consultants, power users, etc., to build workflows that automate time-consuming business tasks and processes. So when we go to the Flow page, you'll see their tagline that basically implies, hey, do all this stuff automatically, work less. And it works across a wide variety of applications and services. So this gives us unprecedented power to make magic happen without writing any code. So what are some of the things that you can do? You can make things happen in another application when an email is received. You can send a text message using Flow. You can connect social media and Yammer and Twitter to other services. You can sync Dropbox files to SharePoint, records within an Excel file in a OneDrive folder to CRM. You can create to-do items in a add-in like Wunderlist automatically from new records that are created in CRM, all sorts of things. It's really only somewhat limited by some core functionality and your imagination. Just like I said, their theme is work less, do more. So how do you get started? Well, all you need is an Office 365 ID login to get access to Flow, or a live ID. You can also get in with a Gmail address, but you only get access to the free Flow version. Also, you can get to it by flow.microsoft.com, and if you look in your Office 365 portal login, you click in the little grid icon in the upper left-hand corner, and one of the many things that drops down is a Flow icon. Click there, and you can get to it. It's also possible to download it and run it off of your small screen device. Okay, so what happens when you get to flow.microsoft.com? First thing is you're going to see 400-plus templates. Some have been created by Microsoft, but in other cases you'll see the number of other individuals. It's possible for you to create a flow, submit it to the Flow team for consideration, and if it passes muster, they're going to put it out on the site, and you're going to have your name in lights up there. It also tells you how many times people have used that flow in that Flow template. It connects to 90-plus services currently. Back in October when it went GA, there was about 50 services. If you monitor the Flow blog, you see that they're regularly posting every week that there are more services being added every few days. Okay, most of the connections are available to use under all the plans, but you'll see the two of the more interesting ones on this list of the premium files of services, Salesforce.com and the Common Data Service are considered premium service connections. They aren't available to use with the free Flow plan or the Flow for Office or Flow for Dynamics 365 plans. You'd have to be on either the Flow Plan 1 or 2, which run like $5 or $15 per user per month to get access to those premium services. Now, personally, I get why Microsoft would like to stick it to Salesforce, but I don't get why our own Common Data Service is only available on the higher priced plans. If anybody on this call has any insight on the why behind that, feel free to jump in at the end of the call and share that with everybody. Also something to consider that when you get a Flow account, you are limited to 50 flows per account. Okay, so when you go to the Flow site, you see a list and these little icons of visuals of all the services. This is just a snapshot of just a few of them. There's others out there to complement the rest of the 90-plus ones. But what's the elephant in the room? I couldn't personally decide between the cute picture of the elephant flying there at the top or the cartoon image, so I put both out there. But the elephant in the room is, simply put, LinkedIn. LinkedIn is not on the list of services that you can currently use with Flow. And really, there's no other service like LinkedIn that's not on the list. I mean, Facebook is on the list, but LinkedIn's not. So we've got some big database-rich applications like Facebook that work with Flow, but no LinkedIn yet. So we all know and feel like LinkedIn's going to be the killer connection, but I don't think Microsoft bought LinkedIn for $26 billion just so they could give it to the Flow team to add as another Flow-free service. So I think we just have to be a little patient to see how LinkedIn rolls out and when it's going to come to Flow and everything else in our world. But it's going to totally change the CRM world. That, of course, would be another webinar to chat about that. So if Flow is so powerful, who's it going to put out of business? Well, let's be realistic. It's not going to put out of business coders that know the CRM API. There's a lot of things that you're going to be doing with the CRM API continually in the future that you'll never be able to do with Flow. It's kind of like portable business logic, and it didn't put JavaScript programmers out of business in the CRM world. Took some of the lighter lifting tasks off the to-do list for them, but they're still around and they're still coding JavaScript like crazy. It's not going to have any real impact on any of these other tool sets that are out there for data migration and integration either. It's probably not going to have much of an impact on ISV solutions that integrate with third-party email marketing or event management systems or anything else there that CRM is connecting out there to in the world. It's not going to replace CRM Workflow. You're going to continue to use CRM Workflow for doing all the things that you've been doing inside of CRM, including sending emails and tasks out of CRM into Outlook. However, if you go out on the Flow site, they do say that Microsoft Flow is going to be the successor to SharePoint Designer for most common business scenarios such as approvals, document review notifications, onboarding and offboarding. So they have targeted to succeed SharePoint Workflow, no mention of how it will react or play with the CRM Workflow world, but I'm not seeing that it's going to be a replacement, but there may be a much larger vision out there than I'm aware of. So you can run Flow on your desktop Windows operating system. That's where you're going to see it run today, and you can also run it off your devices. I've got it loaded on my Android. I use it to keep track of what's going on with my flows. You can also create new flows from your phone device, iOS or Android. But quite frankly, I think that's for the millennials out in the world that like doing that on their phone. I just find it pretty good for viewing and not editing or creating any new flows. So I've got this picture of Tony out there, and he's saying hello to my little friend. So in our world, my little friend is the flow that can run on your small screen device. Okay, what are the building blocks of the Flow system? Well, we've got in the upper left-hand corner, we've got services. Those are the 90-plus services in the cloud that you can connect to. Those are that source. That's the source of where the information is going to come from or where it's going to go to. Then we have on the right-hand side of the screen, triggering events. You create your flow and say, hey, I want you to listen for something, and when that something happens, I want you to wake up and do a action. So you see a screenshot there of some Dynamics 365 trigger events that it can listen to, like when a record is created, deleted, updated, etc. So what are the actions? Let's flip back over here on the left-hand side. Basically, the actions kind of mimic the trigger events, and that's what the flow does for you. So when something happens in service A, do something over in service B that you're connected to. We have conditional capabilities, and you're going to see that in the personal time off example I'm going to demo. So you have if-then type condition capabilities with a yes-no branching, and in the lower right-hand corner we've got the capability to put in some looping, which is really convenient because it's built right into Flow. And for us in the CRM world, we know that that's a workaround activity with CRM workflows. So if you're on this call and you're an on-premise person, all is not lost for all us on-premise diehards that are still out there. There is a gateway that you can install on your Windows server to allow Flow to connect to your on-premise SQL database. It allows you to create, update, get, and delete on rows in a table. Unfortunately, I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but at this time, the gateway doesn't support the CRM API. I've been told that it's on the roadmap, but at the same time, I was told that it was a ways out. This is something I heard back in October. I'm kind of waiting until the summertime to kind of loop back with the Flow team and the CRM product team to say, okay, what's the story on on-premise CRM API support? However, I'm sure that no one on this call would attempt to use the gateway to read or write to their CRM database with Transact SQL. Let's not do that. But if you've got a non-CRM database on your Windows server that you'd like to connect to your online instance of CRM, then you're good to go. Okay, we're not going to go into a deep dive here on Flow licensing and pricing. Let me just say that there's a free plan and 2 paid plans, and there are plans that get built into your Office 365 subscription. You can explore this further. Maybe we'll have a webinar on Flow licensing at some later point. However, here is one of the key components of the licensing model that you really need to pay attention to so it doesn't bite you in the butt. You can burn up your allotment of flow runs if you don't manage them carefully. So for example, if you set your flows to run every 5 minutes, that's 12 times an hour, 24 hours a day, that's 288 runs in a day. If you divide that into 2,000, you're going to be out of your flow allotment in 7 days for the month. So the good news is that there is a reoccurrence trigger that you can put into your flow that you create to set the frequency in terms of seconds, minutes, hours, and days to control the usage level that you want. So the reminder is when you start playing with Flow, before you leave Flow, if you're just practicing and kicking the tires, make sure you turn them off when you're done experimenting. Otherwise, you're going to log back into Flow, and it's going to tell you reached your maximum. Now, this is sort of like a little side bit of information, but as best I can tell, they are currently not managing the Flow monthly allotment. So if you go over, it's still going to run. It's not going to cut you off from your use of Flow for that month. One of the difficulties in the current system is you can't get into the Flow admin panel and see how many flows you've consumed up to date this month. I think that's probably all part of the puzzle. When they probably solve that, they'll also tighten up the management of the monitoring of maximum flow frequency. Okay, security. When you provide these connections and you provide your authentication to these services, you're giving Flow broad create, read, update, and delete item privileges, as you can see right here, to Dynamic CRM. It does respect my privileges within the CRM system, so I cannot create a flow to do something with a entity in CRM that I don't have the right to do normally. Here's something about the data loss prevention policy. So what you see on the left-hand side of this screen is a window that shows that I'm setting up OneDrive for Business to work with Flow. And on the right-hand side of the screen, you see where I've started to create a flow that takes an email message from my Office 365 environment, and it was going to create a OneDrive for Business file. And when you see that I tried to create it, it gives me the warning message that it wasn't supported. That's because the only service that's in the allowed area is OneDrive for Business. To make this particular flow work, the administrator would have to drag and drop Office 365 for Outlook into this top part. That's because the administrator, me, set up an environment and put the user record that was trying to do this in that environment to control their access. If you don't do this, if you don't have a data loss prevention policy in place, anybody that is a licensed CRM user in your system can go out and create flows that do stuff automatically that you'd normally only be able to do with the CRM API. So if you're an admin, CRM admin for Office 365, CRM Dynamics 365, CRM 2016, you're still on 8.1. If you don't allow export to Excel, you don't allow imports by just anyone, or you have personally identifiable information in your CRM system that needs to stay there and is not supposed to go anyplace else, after this webinar, you need to go out and create a DLP policy for Microsoft Flow for your Office 365 environment. Go out to that URL, log in, Bing or Google Flow Data Loss Prevention Policies, read up on it, and put it together. You'll need to set that up. Okay, so we're going to go to the live demo. I'm going to show you a couple things. In the Twitter demo, we're going to look for specific hashtags, and then we're going to create a record in CRM with the tweet info. And then I've got a variation of that where I see who is tweeting with hashtags that I typically use, who have more followers than me. I've got 1,900 followers currently. Hopefully I'll have some more after this event. Hopefully no fewer. So I set up the flow to say, hey, tell me who's tweeting in my favorite hashtag areas that have more than 1,500 followers. Then I'm also going to show you a PTO business application, similar to what we use here at our company in conjunction with our project time card system that we built on the CRM platform. We're going to create a record in CRM. It's going to send out an email to the person's manager. The person's manager is going to click on a button in the email to approve or deny the request, and then the record will be updated in CRM without the manager ever having to log into CRM and navigate to the record. And then an email is going to be sent to the requester with a carbon copy to the manager of the results of the PTO request approval. Okay, so let's go live. So I'm in Microsoft Flow. Here's where you start off right here. Work less, do more. Let me just fix something over here. Bear with me for one moment. And then I can look at the templates. This is great. I can search by select by any one of these filters. It's got nice little picture icons here to give you a visual. If I were to come over here and type in CRM, it's going to give me CRM templates here's Twitter and CRM, SharePoint and CRM. You can just explore these to your heart's content. So I'm going to look at my flows that I've got set up. As you can see, I've got a bunch of them that I've been working with over the last few months, but I've got 3 of them are active for this webinar. So let's explore this first one, Dynamics 365 tweets to CRM. So basically what I've got set up here is 3 hashtags that I'm listening for. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to create a new record in my CRM organization called Stay a While. I've got a custom entity called Twitter Tweet Tracking. And I'm going to pre-fill in a field called the hashtag name with the hashtags I'm monitoring, who was tweeted by, description, tweet text, and so on. I will tell you that I did not spend any time attempting to learn the Twitter API. Basically, what I did was went into CRM, created a custom entity called Twitter Tweet Tracking. I then created a dozen generic text fields 1 through 12, and then what happens is then when you find them here, you in the Twitter Flow, in the Microsoft Flow Designer, you click here, and then you can see what the Twitter fields are that are returned from their API. Some of them are obvious, like retweet count, original tweet user friends count, a little obscure, mention user ID, friends count, things of this nature. I just stuck them into the 12 different boxes, did a couple of practice tweets, see what they brought back, and then I tuned things up in CRM. Okay? So we're just going to close out of here. We're going to look at the other environment I set up here. And I said when a new tweet is posted for one of these two hashtags, I put in a condition. So if the followers count is greater than 1,500, if it's yes, create a new record. And I just want the name of the person who's doing the Twitter post and the number of followers that they have. So we'll just close out of here. And we're going to go over to, move this off my screen for the moment, and we're going to go over to CRM. So if we have our Twitter tweet tracking running here, this is where it was last set. Let me just refresh, and we'll see who's been tweeting. Okay. All right. So here's a tweet right here by this individual. It's got 775 followers and a little bit about them and the hashtags that were being picked up. And here's their actual tweet. Go back to my grid view. Let's see if any, oh, wait a second. We've got somebody right here. Tweeted by this individual, 31 Twitter followers. Hey, great job. Thank you very much. There we go. I like that. There's your moment in lights. Let's see if we've got anything else. Let's hear Microsoft Flow, Mike Hammonds. So this is a handy way that you can use a kind of a do-it-yourself social media program here to listen for tweets about your products, about your company, about competitors. Pull this into CRM. Once you get it into CRM, that we can use the filtering. We can see who that were custom filter. We can use all the capabilities. We can sort by number of followers, all sorts of information. So like I think it's sort of a poor man's social engagement, Microsoft social engagement program. This is pretty straightforward, pretty easy to do. If we just open this up and we kind of come over to the good old form editor, you see we've got a custom entity. We've got just your standard text fields, all the other original text fields I set up just to kind of understand the Twitter API fields I've deleted, and then I tuned it up and it's off and running. Let's look at the Twitter competitors. So basically, this is a pretty simple view. This is the people that are tweeting with the Dynamics 365 or the MSDN CRM hashtag if they're using that, and we can see some people that are out there. Looks like Curation Suite's got 48,000 followers. Ben Hoskins got 2,325. So this is where that conditional logic comes in. So we'll just bring that back for the moment here on the screen. So remember here, this is what I had set up. When a new post is set up, there's the hashtags. If it's greater than 1,500, create the record. If no, do nothing. Pretty straightforward. All right. Kind of tells me who's out there. Who's doing some posting. Let's see who else I know out there. There are some of my own posts that I've done because my actual account is greater than the 1,500 threshold that I set. Larry Lentz, he's been tweeting since the very beginning. Popular guy, fellow MVP. He's got 2,932 followers. Sure, you can do some of these things in TweetDeck. You can see some of these similar things, but it's nice you get them into CRM. You're only living in the CRM world. Okay, so let's move on, and I'm going to bring back Flow again to my main screen here. And what we're going to do is look at the PTO screen. So before I get out there, let's go off on a little bit of a tangent here. You'll see here in this recurrence example, there's a little a rectangle that says Team Flow. this is something that just popped up on the Flow system a few days ago. They didn't have that before. You have this little icon here right now on the right side, the two individuals, and it's possible that you can create a flow now and share it with another team member, and then they can execute that flow under your credentials, basically. There are still some things that are missing from Microsoft Flow. I don't have a way to create a flow and copy it. I do have a way now of sharing it. Copying would be a nice feature. It's on the to-do list. So we're going to look at PTO approval, and we're going to drill down, and we're going to play with this. So basically, PTO, personal time off. Let's expand it. So it says, hey, what's the service I'm listening to? Stay a while, which is one of my CRM organizations. We've got a couple different CRM organizations in my sandbox world I can connect to, but we'll just use stay a while. And then I want to listen for things happening in the PTO custom entity. And then I want to send an approval email. I'm just, for purposes right now, I just had it hard-coded to send to myself for this demo purposes. Normally it would be sent to the manager's email address, which you see over here on the right. But it gives a subject line, PTO approval request. These are the various slugs that I have inserted into the message. And the user options are approved or denied. Okay? And there's not any attachments going with this, and it's coming in with normal importance. So then once this email gets sent out to Jerry with the approval request, and we'll take a look at that in a moment, there's going to be some conditional logic associated with it. And depending upon which option I select, which is either approved or denied, and you'll see two buttons that will appear in the email for that, we're going to do a test. And if it's equal to approved, that's yes, go down this path. If it's not equal to approved, in other words, I selected, clicked on denied, it's going to go down the negative or no branch, and it's going to send out a denied email. So if we look at what the yes message looks like, it's going to go to the requester. It's going to put in the subject line regarding your PTO request, and it's going to tell the requester that their PTO request has been approved, and then it's going to automatically update the stay while PTO record in the CRM system. But let's scroll down here and let's see this one of the little gotchas, which kind of drove me crazy and consumed an hour or two out of my life when I first put this together, is that you would think that you could put in the human readable of the drop-down list in the status request. Hey, Flow's pretty intelligent. It ought to be able to figure that out, handle that, do the conversion to the option set number. Answer is no. You actually have to put in the option set number so that it properly handles it in the API. Okay, and if we were to look down the no branch, we would see essentially the same thing. The message is going to be a little different. We'll see what that looks like when we actually kick the tires. And in that case, the PTO status request starts with 1, has the same number of zeros, but ends with the number 1, which matches the option set value. So what I'm going to do right now is use one of the features within Flow that's really kind of convenient for debugging and troubleshooting. I'm going to just click on Update Flow. And it's going to put it here in a mode so that I can, well, let me do this here. Sorry. Let's click Done, manage it, go to PTO Approval, and I want to click Update Flow. All right. So let me bring back over here my CRM system to the screen. And we're in the grid view for the PTO custom entity. Click on New. And all the PTO requester needs to do is say, hey, I want to request PTO for sick day that I had yesterday, and then they do save and close. We see the grid view here. The PTO request is pending. So what's going to happen next is we go back over here to flow. You see that the flow is indicated here in green that it's processed the first step. So it's really kind of like a real-time debugging capability. I'm just waiting for the mail to come in here. Let's see. Oh, here it is right there. Let me minimize that. No, not everybody in the world needs to look at my inbox. So I'm Justin's manager, and this is using the logic that's in CRM. We've got Justin's user record in CRM, and his user record points to me as the manager. And it says, hey, just like in the slugs in the flow designer, it says Justin Cole has requested sick leave on this date. And in the body of the message, it's got the information, and I'm going to click on Approved. It looks a little different in Outlook Web Access than it does look in Outlook 2016. But what we're going to see is it's working. If not, I have to go over to and launch my CRM Outlook client. Come on, this is demo time here. We're going to launch Outlook here in the background, just to make sure. Should be popping up a new screen here with us that says it was approved. Let's go back over here to this box here. Come on, get over there. Second monitor. It's still spinning. I'm going to close that out here. We're going to open it up, and we're going to click Approved. All right. So what you see here is a message that you'll see if someone tries to click the button twice, okay, which I did. So even though it was spinning in the Outlook Web Access screen, it actually was being processed here. Let me show you the email that went out. And this went out to Justin from me, CC to me also, and it says, Justin Cole, your PTO request for sick on February 1st is approved. Your best friend forever, Jerry Weinstock. Okay, so if we go back to the flow system, what you would see is green here, green there, passed the condition, and went down the proper path. Now here's the part that's really cool in the system here. You can click and expand here, and you can see what's happening inside of each step. So here's what happened, that it was a record that had the sick leave approval, PTO request type. Here's the option set value. Here's the approval email that went out. Information. Let's look at the condition here. So let's show the condition. Scroll down. Scroll this down here. And here's the approval email that went out, your PTO request, and this is the email dissected that just went out. And then we update the record condition action. PTO request status. Here's the option set value that it's going to update, the type that it's going to set it to, that it was set to, and the other information. So let's go over to CRM. Bring back CRM. A lot of screens to move around. Okay, so what we have here is the grid view that was stuck on the screen previously, but if I double click and open it up, it's been set to approved. Okay, pretty slick, I think, generally speaking. So I'm going to bring that off the screen for the moment. We're going to go back to, we're going to click on Done, click over here to Manage. One of the things I can also do is if I click on this information icon, I can look at the history of all my flows. I can look at successes and failures. Just successes. Here are all the successes for this flow and when it last ran. So let's go back to this flow again. And we're going to do something just a little the opposite of that here. We're going to come over here and click New. And we're going to come over here, and Mr. Cole is going to request a day off for a new job search on this Friday. And save and close. And we are going to go back over here to Flow. And usually it happens pretty quickly. When you're in the Flow Designer mode, it seems to trigger a lot quicker than it does if you're not. We'll just wait for it. Hey, there's the pop-up. There's the email. I don't have Update Flow running. That's why. So let's take a look at the email that came in. Justin's requested day off for a new job search tomorrow, and I'm going to click on Denied. So when you mouse over Denied, you can see a pretty ugly link that you're going to get sent to, and it's going to open up in a browser window. It says, hey, thank you, your response denied has been successfully registered, and it's being done through Azure. What is it? msmanaged-na.azure-apm.net, and so forth. And hey, this quickly, the message goes out to Justin and says, hey, your new job search for Friday is denied. Your not-so-best friend forever, Jerry. And if we go into CRM, bring that back on the screen, a lot of shuffling going back and forth here. I apologize for that. That's just the way it runs. We will find that here in a moment. There it is. Bring it. Oops, dragging the wrong one over. There it is. We go back here to our PTO Grid View. Here's a new job search. Just do a simple refresh, and it comes in as denied. So if you think about this, this is just an example of one of the things that you can do with this conditional logic, approved, denied. Imagine this. Let's say you close out a case. You could send it to the customer, and it could say, hey, how good did we do a good job for you? And it could be yes or no. It doesn't have to be approved, denied. That's just what's sitting in Flow. I come over and bring my Flow screen back over here. Bring it up. Come over here and edit. I could change approved, denied to I love you. I love your service. I hate your service. And that's what would appear in the buttons, and then we would just update the logic over here that says I love your service, and we'd come over here and stick it in there. And if I love your service is equal in the response, it's going to go down the happy path, and it could update the case record. If it is not equal to it, it's going to put it in the negative part of the case record. I'm going to close this here, and there we go. So what I want to do now is go back to the slide deck. I've shown you everything here in Flow that I wanted to show. A couple things here. You can create a flow from a blank flow that you do it on your own. You can create it from a template. You just pick your template. I mentioned recurrence. I'll show you the recurrence example. We'll just open that up here, and basically you have the recurrence. You can do it day, hour, week, by minute. And then you can set your interval, so you want this particular flow to run once a day. Here's a word to the wise. After you create your flow, it doesn't have the ability to come back in and insert a step. So if I go back to these flows that I have here, and I only wanted to check this flow once a day, run this flow once a day, I don't have a way of inserting a step. That's got to be coming. I'm sure it will be. So let's go back to good old PowerPoint. And I'm going to go from the current slide where I left off, swap it, minimize this, and let's go forward a little bit here. So what are your next steps? Go out to flow.microsoft.com, create a flow, give this template a go, basically, you know. Let's hang on there. So it's time for question and answers. Let me pull up the Q&A session. Q&A window. Let's see. Jason, we're ready to take some question and answers. Work from the Q&A box. Okay.
Yeah, sure. So, if you haven't asked your question yet, please do put it into the Q&A block. We have several lined up already, and we'll start going through them here.
Okay.
So I think the first one was from Ajith X asking, is there any exception management support in Microsoft Flow? For example, if one of my flow steps fails and I need another action to some other service.
Oh, so that's interesting. So you're running your flow, and let me do something here before we get who knows what appears on the screen. I just needed to close out of Outlook so we don't get some pop-ups. Hang on for a moment. Okay. So to the best of my knowledge, that feature is not available. You're going to be able to see if your flows are failing or succeeding, you know, by getting back into the flow system, the flow panel, or on your small screen device. But there is no, hey, if this step fails, send a message over here to yourself. There is nothing like that available. There is a flow suggestion site where you can put that out there on the community site, and that would be the thing to do. That's a good point. Okay, next item.
From a CRM perspective, does Flow run only on records that you own or have security access to, or does it run on all records? In other words, in terms of workflow in CRM, does it run on behalf of a user who updated, created the record, or the person who owns the flow?
Yeah, so there's two parts to that. Yes, you cannot create a flow and do something in CRM, for example, that you do not have rights normally to interact with that record. However, and it'll come up with a warning. It says, hey, you don't have access to this particular record type entity. On the other hand, it is sort of like CRM Workflow, so where I showed you that team functionality where you could share it with a flow with someone else, like CRM Workflow that runs in the background, that runs under the auspices of the creator and owner of the workflow, flows that you share with someone else will run under the auspices of the credentials of the individual that initially created the flow.
All right. Can I set a threshold for the maximum runs per month and get a notification, like an email or an SMS?
Not yet. Not yet. Typically what happens if we were to go back to the Flow admin panel, what I have seen is when you log in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see a message that says you've used your 700 flows for the month. Now, as I said, that does not appear to be being enforced currently, so I wouldn't worry about it for a little while yet, but that is something you're going to have to pay attention to, and getting notifications of where you are. And if you're, outpacing where you want to be, I don't think I've seen that yet mentioned. That's a good thing to add. Okay?
Okay, Dan writes that he's pretty new to CRM, but if he wanted to do email notification once a process is completed in CRM, should he do that in the CRM workflow or using Microsoft Flow?
Yeah. So Dan, that's a very good point to help distinguish between when you should be using CRM. So CRM Workflow. I would use CRM Workflow for anything that happens within CRM. an opportunity gets closed out as one and you create a new project record. A task is completed and you want to create a follow-up appointment. You could do that in Microsoft Flow, but don't. Do that entirely within CRM Workflow. If you complete a task or an opportunity closes out as one and you want to send out a notification to the world by email, I would use CRM Workflow to do that. Now, if you want to create a process where a new account is being onboarded and you create the new account record and they move from being a prospect to a customer, and you use like Wunderlist as a add-in and you want to create a to-do item in Wunderlist, then I would use Microsoft Flow to listen for account records that go from being prospect to customers that you own and have it generate a Wunderlist activity for you. Okay?
All right. Do you want to pick and choose here, or do you want me to?
Yeah, Mike's asked a question. Can you explain again? Yeah, can you explain again about not having access to the CRM API in on-premise? Does that mean you can't trigger a flow based on a record create and update? That is correct. You could set up the connector so that it looks for the SQL row being created that's been created or update, and use Transact SQL to look for it, but you can't use the CRM API. There is no CRM API hook into the on-premise connector. So if you're a CRM on-premise organization today, you're going to be very limited to what you can do with Microsoft Flow, unfortunately. Somebody's asking, where does Microsoft Flow stand and compare with Azure Logic Apps? Excellent point. Logic Apps is the Microsoft Flow version for developers. We can get into Logic Apps with Visual Studio. So anything that's being done in Flow, you can do inside of Logic Apps and do it in Visual Studio. But you got to be one of the uncommon folks. You got to be a coder to do that. Somebody's asking, can we create a CRM record based on a row update in SQL Server? How does this count as a user's run in Flow? So it's looking, Flow's going to be listening, and every time it sees the new record being created in SQL, it's going to trigger the Flow, so something that's going to count as one of your Flow interactions, which it could create a record in your CRM Online instance. Adam wants to know is, can you design a flow and deploy it to several people organization-wide? Yeah, you can use that new team sharing function. But remember, when you do this, you're giving them broad rights to the sharing functionality at this time. So they can edit it, delete it, and change it. Kind of like you're setting up My View and you're sharing it with someone else, but you're giving them all the privileges. So got to be careful when you do that. Dennis wants to know, can you use Flow in SharePoint? Most definitely. Would the approved yes/no options be available from desktop Outlook or just the web Outlook? Well, as we found out today, it definitely works in desktop Outlook. It seems to not work just quite right in the web Outlook. I have used it in Outlook for the phone. It does work there. I'm going to have to do a little investigation offline on why when I clicked on the web Outlook message for approve, it just kept spinning. Yeah, I think the recording is going to be available. You can create a flow that is really flows are personal, but with the new team sharing capability, you can make it share it with other users. But in a sense, it is a flow. You can set up a flow that does work organization-wise. So you can see the flow that I created for PTO. That was set up so that when the flow record is created, the email goes out to the person's manager asking for approval or denial, and then the result of the approval or denial gets sent to the requester. So that is a flow that I set up as a CRM administrator, but it works for anybody in our organization that is requesting PTO time off, and it also works with whoever their manager is. Is it possible to integrate any contact information entered in WordPress to Dynamics CRM? There actually is a WordPress service connection. I have not explored that yet, but the connection may support forms in WordPress. Is the amount of flows per month measured by each flow, Twitter to Dynamics CRM, Dynamics 365 to Outlook, and the duration between the run of each flow? The flows are measured based upon the number of times the event is triggered. So if I'm looking in my social media example, if I'm listening for a hashtag of, hashtag gobbledygook, and no one ever tweets with hashtag gobbledygook, I'm not going to get any incremental counts to that flow in terms of its consumption. Flow.microsoft.com is not specific to CRM workflows. It's a workflow engine within itself. It connects with CRM. It does not replace CRM workflows, Krati. It is an extra feature within Office 365. Somebody is asking, how does workflows work against a large amount of data from SQL to CRM? Let's see. That's a case where I would not use Flow. It is not what I would call enterprise class, so if you are getting hundreds or thousands or millions of new records being created in SQL that you want to then trigger an event or an action, listen for that event and trigger that action in CRM or some other service, that's where you would use the commercial packages like Kingsway or Cozy Rock or Scribe to do that kind of heavy lifting. I would never consider using Flow for that purpose at this time. Is there a retry mechanism? You can resubmit, but generally if the flow fails, you're not going to be able to do a retry that's specific. I think we're at the top of the hour almost. I see one more question. Is there a temp variable that I can use my flows process between actions? I'm not sure what you're asking there, Ajit.
All right. Well, Jerry, do you have contact information that you want to share if people want to reach out to you?
Yeah.
Or, any other information to share? Yeah.
Sure.
Right, great.
So if you go out there, you can see my contact information on the screen by phone, or send me a tweet, or by email. I think there's some questions about the PowerPoint. Jason and I will work out something on the PowerPoint slide deck. I'd be glad to share that. And then we'll also put it out on our site because we'll do a blog posting about this session. So in closing for me, I hope the next thing that you do, if you're not going to lunch now, is to go to flow.microsoft.com and kick the tires a little bit, get excited. It's just a fantastic product solution.
Excellent. Well, Jerry, thank you for taking the time to put together such a great presentation for us today, getting a lot of really positive feedback from the folks in the audience. If you haven't commented yet, please look for the survey that will pop up as you close out today. It just takes 15, 20 seconds, and it gives us and it gives our presenters some really good insight into what you thought of today's event, maybe what you'd like to see in the future too. So please do look for that as you close out. We'll also be getting back in touch, like Jerry said, regarding slides and the recording. So with that, we're going to wrap up today. Jerry, thank you once again for doing this with us.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate any comments that anybody has. Please be brutally honest. Thank you.
All right, that concludes today's event. Have a great day, everybody.